Hey guys, Liana here. All right, before we get in to today's topic by request, I have a request to make. Everyone out there in internet land who cares very much about what I think about Anita Sarkeesian's work and theories, I would greatly appreciate you also supporting my work and my theories and my work product because I do multiple videos every week on a cosplay show for The Escapist that I would like to do well because they pay me. And I do YouTube videos, which I would like to do better so I can not have to worry about working for other people because I can't fire myself on YouTube. YouTube would create a huge amount of job security, which I don't have right now. So, over 100,000 people. I haven't checked the counts recently, but the last time I watched, 100,000 people have watched that first part in the video series I did about my experiences with Anita Sarkeesian's so-called fans. A much smaller number have actually engaged in my own work. And I don't want to exist to critique Anita Sarkeesian. I don't care enough about her personal goings on or whatever she may have been before she was a game critic, or even what she does now outside of her actual thoughts on games. I don't care. I'm going to take her work at face value. I don't need to know if she did multi-level marketing stuff before. I don't care. It's not relevant. Why? Because the way I approach analysis is I actually analyze what she's saying about games. You don't need to go further. There's enough to adapt and build on and correct in her actual work that you don't have to attack her as a person. This is silly. She is no longer a games critic. She is the Kim Kardashian of video games. Her eventual, achievement, the achievement unlocked, gaming's first reality star. Okay? People care more about every little word she utters in a talk than what she's actually saying about games, because she hasn't really put out a tropes versus women in quite some time. She is famous for being famous at this point. When the work product comes back, I see the need to talk about it. But there were supposed to be 12, 13 tropes versus women videos. We got 6. Where did all that stretch goal money go? And that's the thing about Kickstarter. We're not allowed to ask that. It's buyer beware. Fine. So we move on. If this is considered an inappropriate line of questioning, fine. We take those 6 videos. We treat them for what they are. We take the few things that, all right, we need to clarify these terms, or we need to consider this. We take those few things that really do have some value, and we build from them. We build from her work. We don't tear down the person. And this thing about this conference in Sweden, I really don't know what to say about it, because this talk has nothing to do with video games. Okay, nothing. I'm going to show you guys. Okay. Here we go. You see, Wednesday, August 19th, that was yesterday. Okay. So, whoops, I went past it. In this keynote presentation, American media critic Anita Sarkeesian will share how a day of life with online harassment is. Harassment? She'll be accompanied by comic book writer Suleiman Bakhit, who will share ideas and practices on how to counter hate and terrorism. So, it has nothing to do with video games. Nothing. What am I supposed to comment on? Okay. There's another one today. I can't speak to her personal experiences online. I mean, I've seen some of the stuff that people have been flipping out about, and I really don't understand. We we really still seem to collectively be struggling with this concept of other people have the right to their opinions. Okay? And, you know, I can't communicate with Anita Sarkeesian anymore. She's blocked me on Twitter. So any hope of a dialogue between us is now gone. She's indicated no contact. Okay? And when someone blocks you, you stop trying to contact them. Why? Because that's what block means. Leave me alone. And that's all it means. You know, that's all it means. I respect. She does not want to talk to me. Even though, you know, I've confirmed that I think she has received undue harassment. And I've said over and over and over again that my issues with her are purely a professional disagreement. I don't have any personal issues with her. We have very different styles. We have very different approaches. We have very different, ways of analyzing games. She is happy to use the old tools from books and film and television. I am trying to use a different set of tools when appropriate, such as performative gender over gaze theory, or I'm trying to create adapted or brand new tools in order to get more accurate results. But do I care about these conspiracy theories about her? No, I don't care. You know, she could be a complete puppet for all we know, but she could also just be a person who gets nervous very easily and isn't a very good public speaker, ironically enough. And I'm referring to her apparent inability to do any talk, no matter how candid, without notes, without multiple pieces of paper in front of her. And that's where Anita and I are different. I do a lot of stuff off the cuff, and I take shit for it. And so, in a sense, I understand why she would be hesitant to go off script, because every single word you say is judged. I can't do comedy about games anymore at talks, because I had a few things that were done as comedy routines, and people thought they were my legitimate opinions on games. And when I said, guys, it was a joke, like it was something called rant and rave night, I was paraphrasing a Chris Rock routine. I was told, yeah, right, it's a joke. We always hear that. And, it's how you really feel. You're just hiding it in humor. Okay, thank you for being a greater authority on what's in my head than me, you bunch of assholes. That's how I feel, and it's like, all right, unfortunately, for the time being, gaming has lost its sense of humor, and I can't joke about it. And I admit, I am exceptionally angry at the people who spread that narrative that I really do believe certain things that I was talking about in a comedy bit. And the accusations of inflating review scores because of a comedy bit. Like, that's how far gone gaming is, okay? And to me, accusing me of that is just as silly as accusing Princess Peach of being some sort of agent of patriarchy. It's just, of course she's a role that has patriarchal overtones. She's a medievalist character. I mean, the whole idea of a princess in a castle, it's usage of a trope, right? It's usage of a trope. It's not saying anything specific about the symbol. Like, we're getting into semiotics here, and I don't want to do that. I want to keep it relatively on topic. So, one of the things that came up, like I said, was this idea that, she's just a face for her boyfriend to spout off about things. Well, I'll tell you guys, this is a very common criticism that women get. I have MRA groups who for the past year have been pushing this same narrative about me, that people only care about me because my husband is famous. It's absurd. My husband is famous for doing comedy and entertainment reporting in Canada. He has absolutely nothing to do with video games. Yes, I was the co-host of the show because I was a writer for 7 years beforehand, and host after host came through, and finally it was like, you know what, no one does his job better than Liana, let's give it to her. It was all men before me. I didn't join this show thinking, oh yeah, I'm going to be the co-host of this show, because it was a job for a man at the time. But I had been writing for Ed the Sock for so long that it was like, no, you know this better than anybody else. You can react, you can improvise better than anybody else, so you deserve the job. But, you know, I happen to be the wife, and that automatically means I didn't deserve it. Well, is that very fair? No. No, it's absolutely not fair. But the only thing I can do about that is go out there and do a good job. And, you know, I really think it's irrelevant who writes the bulk of tropes versus women content. Because do you think Jon Stewart writes every word that comes out of his mouth? Do you think any newscaster writes every word that comes out of their mouth? I mean, the only newscaster I know who writes the vast majority of his own copy is Keith Olbermann, and he cracked up from the practice because it was too much work for one person to do in a day. The big question is, does she endorse the viewpoint? You know, is this what she wants to say? And it's her choice to go out there and say it. Now, it's really funny to me that a bunch of anonymous people on the internet are questioning the source of the ideas. Because, you know, if Jonathan McIntosh wants to put on, you know, girl face, how is that any different from pretending to be a woman online? It isn't, okay? And this culture of distrust is getting in the way of us making better games and getting good ideas and you know, moving forward. And I'm tired of it, and I won't be a part of it. And I especially don't want to feed in. I mean, I'm stuck because unfortunately, every time I talk about Anita Sarkeesian, it becomes one of those popular things I do. And I know it's not because people like me. It's they hate her. Again, Kim Kardashian of gaming, right? Somebody has a spat with Kim Kardashian online, or somebody criticizes Kim Kardashian, they're automatically going to get more, more attention than if they were just talking on their own because she's Kim Kardashian. Kim Kardashian is the highest negative Q score in Hollywood. And she rides that all the way to the bank. Okay? She is set for life because she monetized hatred. And this is why I find it kind of funny that this talk is hate and heroism. I mean, Anita Sarkeesian's a perfect person to talk about hate. She monetized it. Okay? Because what I would have done in her case with Jonathan McIntosh, and this is very difficult. It's difficult when it is your spouse, but I have had to do it too. I told my husband not to get involved in the gaming fights. He got involved with a particular MRA because he knew the story there, and that was personal. It was they were personal issues. It was a guy who didn't understand boundaries. And so, you know, that husband instinct kind of kicks in, and he told the guy off. But after a little bit, I said to him, please stop now. You're just feeding into what they want, which is more ammunition to just smear me all over the internet. And sure enough, they did. Sure enough, it was, look, her husband says this. She's just being blah, 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 blah. And why an MRA would care about what a husband says about his wife, I mean, I thought that was the whole thing, right? Is MRAs are supposed to be giving men back their balls, in theory. So what's wrong with that? I don't understand. I don't understand MRA thinking. I just don't. And why don't I? Because it's very hard. There is one guy I have ever met who is an MRA who I can have a conversation with, and I can ask him, you know, well, why do you identify as this? What is it about this movement? What principles do you support? And he'll tell me, and it will stay civil. Because everyone else I have tried, it has gone into emotion and personal anecdote way too quickly. And the minute you start sort of going, yeah, but the statistics say this isn't true, or, but that's only one half of the issue, or anything like that, boom. Boom. It just, and that's not a cool Flynn boom from Skylanders. It blows up. It blows up, and you get a hate article about you, or a nasty video on YouTube, or you cannot have a disagreement without a swarm. And this, or them just, going totally off the rails. And I mean, I've had conversations with MRAs that ended up with them bringing up, you're Jewish, you should have an issue with this. It's like, my religion has nothing to do with the discussion on gender. Okay, Hitler comes up or something like that, and the problem is, in these conversations, the minute you say to somebody that is not necessary, then the emotion comes pouring out, then the rage that is really driving the passion comes out, and it just becomes unproductive and unpleasant, and I don't have time to I don't have time for those feels. If you want somebody to deal with your feelings, go see a counselor, go see a life coach, spend time with your family and loved ones. It's not fair to say to me, you want debate, then get butthurt when you get debate. And, I don't think we're used to debate, because we're used to this two-sided monologues. Hear me out, because that sounds contradictory on its face. We have Anita Sarkeesian, and she makes these speeches, and she makes these statements, and she talks about what people on the internet say about her. It's like meat-based subtweeting. Okay, what she's doing. She's not engaging. She's not discussing. And, can I blame her? Well, not really, because, my understanding is she assumes everybody, including me, is a troll. Which is a form of internet privilege in and of itself, that you are in such a heightened area that you can just block people. You don't have to really care what people think. Your negatives no longer matter. You don't have to engage. You're in such rarefied air. And, there's an element to that I think she does have a blind spot too, because the rest of us actually have to keep dealing with it. Because if we don't, we have nothing to add that she doesn't add, and people can just keep going to her. And I think that it must be pretty tough to deal with what she does on the internet. I mean, I know I don't get as much of it as I did, say, 4 months ago. It's starting to calm down, because there hasn't been a hit piece, a hate video, some weird conspiracy theory in a while. Of course, the new conspiracy theory is that I suppress conspiracy theories. But I don't really care about that. What I care about is that my comment sections in my Twitter feed and my Facebook and all this stuff are not so crowded with trolls that actual people that want to have a conversation can do so without the peanut gallery piling on and derailing the discussion, or, worse, somebody who wants to send me positive feedback, because it does matter, okay? I don't have Anita Sarkeesian's model. I can't write hate all the way to the bank. So the positive feedback does matter. Showing third parties that people support what I'm doing as an alternative is exceptionally important. But I understand people don't do that publicly because they're afraid they're going to get dogpiled by trolls. And that's the real issue, right? And so that's why I said to my husband, like, look, please just don't defend me. I know you want to, but don't defend me. I have to fight this on my own. And I told him a year ago, I said, I will probably lose. I will probably lose because there's no winning in this model. You never win against trolls. You never do. All you can do is survive. And with Anita, her significant other has been quite vocal. And this is the difficulty with being a writer. I think Jonathan McIntosh has to decide whether he wants to be a writer or whether he wants to be a public person in his own right, because you never want the writer to be in the spotlight. You're supposed to make... He is failing at making his boss look good. And his boss is Anita Sarkeesian. Okay? This happens to male executives too. It's not just a female thing. If someone who is supposed to be your subordinate is running wild, it makes you look less like you have it under control. And I think it's more accurate to say they're partners, and they probably should more accurately be doing things on camera together, because it is a team effort. They have to decide to do that, or Jonathan McIntosh has to stop being a public person. Those are the two options, right? From a media perspective, from a getting the message out perspective, because otherwise these accusations of, puppet mastering are going to continue. I mean, I've seen these things happen to men. I mean, look at the whole "you didn't write your raps" thing. It's the same thing. In this case, we can eliminate possibilities that are not gender. Are they more likely to believe she is a dumb bunny because she's female? Sure. I mean, there's no denying that. But, it's also that she's a woman who takes a certain amount of pride in her appearance. That doesn't help, unfortunately. But there are things you can do that way. They choose not to, fine. I mean, she's not hurting by this stuff. And, to me, people accuse me of being an idiot all the time, or not being a real reporter, or, and the more stuff I manage to get published, the more examples people can see of my actual work, the more chances I get, the easier it is to not care. Okay. I mean, I still unfortunately have trouble getting pieces of substance published. It's just difficult, because nobody wants the screaming that will ensue on a site that I sort of consider one I want my work to appear on. Because the one thing I learned over the past year is you can't do that typical freelancer thing of, please take my work, I don't care who takes my work, just, do you pay? Fine, take my work, right? You can't do that in gaming. You're tied to the reputation of the outlet you're a part of. And, the SPJ talk, the Airplay talk, talked about the fact, I believe it was Ren LaForme, that said you have to start looking more at the individual reporters and not the publication. Follow reporters, not the websites, which is something I've been saying for about 9 months. But the public spoken, they don't want that. They want brand trust. They want it to be one of these things where you go to a website and it can be predictable what every single reporter or op-ed columnist is going to say. That's not possible. That's not even right. That's not even right in media. I mean, that is the description of an echo chamber, isn't it? That you go to a website and know exactly what you're going to get. There's no diversity of opinions. I've had a couple people ask me about certain colleagues and who have more right-wing views. I don't agree with them, obviously, but they are entitled to those views. They are hired in part because they are right-wing, because right-wing viewpoints deserve time so that we can examine them and see if they have, merit or not. Some people are on Twitter right now that I know talking about defunding Planned Parenthood. I completely disagree. I think that's based on emotion and a series of admittedly grotesque videos that, it's the same tactic that people used against chicken farming back in the day to try to get people to go vegan. It's disgusting. It trips your disgust, the disgust center of your brain. And, research has shown that people with more conservative leanings are more driven by the disgust reaction. So it's working. But you can't let logic derail and recognize, hey, Planned Parenthood already doesn't get money for abortions. So shutting them down wouldn't prevent abortions. and then I'll go and I'll read historical papers about what women did to induce their own abortions before abortion was legal. And it's just sort of like, that's where my opinion comes from, where making abortion illegal doesn't stop abortion. It's just like prohibition. Making alcohol illegal doesn't stop people from drinking, right? It just, that's a complicated thing. And I don't think denying people health care is going to prevent abortions. It's just gonna, I mean, you read stories about black slaves performing their own abortions with hat pins, and you're like, oh God, like, please give, please let women continue to have access to medical care so they don't get that desperate. I mean, it's just a different paradigm, isn't it? It's just a different paradigm. It's just a different way of looking at an issue. So, do I care if someone wants to defund Planned Parenthood? If they're not constantly wanting to talk about it and they can't stop when asked, I do not care. We can still, and it's not even for friendship reasons. It's not, do we want to hang out? No. Can I work with this person? Yes, absolutely I can. Because their political views should have no bearing on a discussion of video games. Now, people are going to go, but wait, yes, I hear you. Discussion of video games has become exceptionally politicized because of people like Anita Sarkeesian. I am not denying that. Anita Sarkeesian's analysis of video games is intensely political. It's not just feminist. It's collectivist feminism. And collectivism is another word for Marxism. Okay, I'm trying to be very kind here. This idea that gender identifiers are bad comes directly from Marxist feminists. And by Marxist feminists, I mean feminists who were writing under communism. Okay, this isn't a cultural thing. They were Marxists. A lot of the early second wave feminists were Marxists because they were writing in places that were communist. Does that mean they didn't have a single good idea? No. And this is this thing about personality politics in the space of thought, in academia, or in the marketplace of ideas. Someone can be vile, but have one good idea. And if that one good idea is going to benefit people, then we shouldn't reject that idea based on the identity of the speaker. And unfortunately, the postmodern approach to things is all about identity of the speaker, isn't it? And, I struggle with this as an intersectionalist, going, well, yes, someone's race is absolutely relevant to their life experience, or lived experience, as we call it. But does that mean that, I think that, one of the things I got in trouble from was saying, I forget the exact quote, but, the best ideas for black people won't come from me, whatever. And someone who actually was black said to me, when I talked to them about the fact that people were freaking out at me over the internet from something that is, essentially common sense, that an outsider can't tell an insider about being an insider, which is what I was trying to say. Non-gamers can't tell gamers about being gamers. She said, I think that ultimately the best ideas for us have to come from ourselves. And that's true. And that's sort of the individualism thing I was talking about, earlier in the week. And that's the antithesis of views influenced by Marx. And Marx influenced a lot of stuff. And I think because it was just so radical and against the status quo. And the other thing you have to remember is that, one of Anita Sarkeesian, the people she looks up to, is Bell Hooks, who was, a black feminist, writing, in a time period where the black community has to use strength in numbers because individual black people get rejected too much in America as individuals. And I just think it's funny that according to the outrage warrior ideology, you're not supposed to culturally appropriate. And one could claim that applying the writings of bell hooks when you're not black is cultural appropriation, because bell hooks' writing was so fundamentally informed by her blackness. I'm not quite so judgmental that way. It's just funny that the people who support Anita Sarkeesian do jump down people's throats for cultural appropriation, and this could be considered a cultural appropriation, borrowing the messaging and the well, a huge part of it is the anger. A huge part of black feminism that is misunderstood is the process of allowing somebody to be angry and working through it, because you got to understand I think a lot of people listening will understand this because they've been going through it for the past year. You have to be allowed to get angry and work out that anger and vent it out and be heard, be told your anger is legitimate before you can really sit down and have a civil conversation. Now, that doesn't mean you can go around yelling at everyone. That just means that, it would really help on big issues like this when people are like, hey, don't tell us who we are. I'll tell you who I am. Thank you very much. I am the authority on me. And I understand why gamers did that almost a year ago. It'll be a year ago in 8 days. I understand why gamers got angry. I was out there, and it's really funny to me that credit for doing this has completely evaporated. I have been so eclipsed by grandstanders. I was the one to cover Gamergate. I was there for a minute. I was there like, oh my God. I started covering Gamergate. I started researching it August 26th. My first article was put out September 12th. But all that went away because I had an article on an unrelated issue, one single article published on Polygon. And I had 2 articles previous to that published on Gamer People cared more about the fact that I was, sleeping with the enemy, pardon the pun, based on the subject matter, because that's how I was treated, as some sort of traitor, because I wrote one friggin' piece. And oh God, I got thousands. I was getting 500 nasty messages, not just angry, nasty. Will put your head on a pike. You will be silenced. Things like that. 500 nasty tweets an hour for 3 days. It broke my Twitter. So I'm not going to criticize Anita Sarkeesian for speaking about that experience, because I realize this is how she probably lives every time she opens her mouth. But all that's doing is making her more powerful. Like, you guys, if you're freaking out over what she's doing, you're contributing to what she's doing, because she is a reality TV show right now. Her personality has so eclipsed her thought because she hasn't really put out thought in a while. She hasn't put out a new theory. She hasn't put out a new tropes versus women video. Nothing. She's done talks that you're not there for, and you can't receive it in context. You can't sit there and get the original. So what? You're adding to her fame. You are adding to her Kim Kardashian of gaming status. Okay? You don't like that? Stop doing it. Just leave it alone. Because the opposite of, love isn't hate. The opposite of love is indifference. She rides hate to the bank the same way Kim Kardashian does. There will probably be a fresh Kickstarter coming up for the new material, unless she's getting total corporate dollars. And where do those corporate dollars come from? Her status as a victim of legitimate online harassment. Well, where does this online harassment come from? Other people. Remember what I said about your reputation being dictated by other people? There you go. So you guys have power. I'd personally like to see, she stated quite quite vehemently in this talk that she's an expert on the depiction of women in video games. I would like to see more of that. Okay? I would like to see more of that and less of a personal narrative, because that I can talk about. I'm very sorry she's getting all this garbage. I don't understand it. I do not understand. I think some people hate her because they think they're supposed to, the way the way Kim Kardashian does, the way a lot of people hate me because they think they're supposed to hate me because, oh, big bad feminist. You know, do you guys not realize that for me, feminism is I won't drop the tag. I'm not going to let other people decide. I'm not going to make that part of my identity, because autonomy is a core value of feminism, autonomy and agency. So I would be a complete hypocrite. I've had a lot of women say, you know, I used to identify as a feminist, but, well, then you let other people decide for you what you were going to call yourself within reason. Does it describe your attitudes? Does it describe your views? Well, why wouldn't you use it? Well, because it's unpopular. Well, a primary goal of modern feminism is the recognition that women have unique issues openly being their authentic selves. And so for me to drop this because it's unpopular would completely defeat the purpose of me believing in these principles. I can't, because then I would be a hypocrite. How do I go and tell other people, be your authentic self, if I'm too scared to be my authentic self? And being your authentic self should not be scary. We should value authenticity, but we don't, because there's so much paranoia and so much suspicion out there. So that's what I think about people asking me to comment on this stuff. And it's probably not what a lot of people are looking for, and it's probably going to be not well received. But I'm trying to do my own thing. And it's this constant thing of, you know, why don't you be the anti-Anita? Why don't you be the anti-Anita? Well, because then when Anita's brand falls, so does mine. I want to be Liana. I want to be Liana Kersner, okay? And I want my views to get attention. And I want my views to be scrutinized. And I want my views to get some time and be tested. I don't even need the speaking gigs. I mean, the speaking gigs are pay, right? That's where you get the cash, is speaking gigs and consulting and things like that. So that's part of it. But I want to do the work, and I want people to see the work. And that is not going to come from Anita Sarkeesian because of the Kim Kardashian of video games effect. Anybody that ends up in the Kardashians' orbit is just feeding the fame of the Kardashians. Anyone who steps into Anita Sarkeesian's orbit is feeding the fame of Anita Sarkeesian, and it doesn't benefit anybody else but them. I did the one piece because I felt that it needed to be said. It's part of the public record. But I wanted to use that piece as a jumping off point to get my own ideas out there and how they differ. But guess what? You cross her in certain groups, you're a pariah. And if you stop short of saying she's the devil in other groups, you're a pariah. How does this move forward? It can't. Everything is focused on her, and the gaming industry is letting this happen. In fact, I think it's encouraging it because it benefits the gaming industry to have this person that gaming can lift up on its shoulders, because it's easier to just support one woman than it is to support a diverse group of women with divergent views. Because, you know, to get a little bit stereotypical right now, I would just, men are, you know, that whole thing about, you know, men's thought processes or men's sex drive, and it's an on-off switch, and then women's, and it's a whole button. It's that stereotype. Oh, women are too complicated, so we'll just pick one. You know, like, no, guys, that's not enough. That's not enough. You actually want to make better products, you need more than one idea. Could you imagine if you changed any other element of your video game based on one person's idea? No matter how powerful you think that person is, it's still one person. So we got to do better. Well, we don't got to do better. Got nothing. I would like things to be better. Because I see a lot of people legitimately hurt, and I can't abide that. So hopefully that at least made you think. It probably made you angry. But like I said, work through that anger, get it out, but then stop and think. Use your noodle. Noodles are tasty.